Welcome in the video on Christabel Part 1, written by S.T.Coleridge, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. In this video, I am going to discuss the background and a brief introduction of the poem Christabel, Part 1st. This is prescribed in BA Part 2, English Literature, Paper 1, Poetry and Drama. I am Dr. Vinita Bhadoria, Associate Professor of English in Government College, Behror. Christabel. Christabel is one of the famous long poems written by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, a great English writer and philosopher. It is a wonderful lyric ballad about the supernatural encounter of a young innocent girl, Christabel. Part 1 was the first written in 1797 and part 2 was later added in 1800. The poem entitled Christabel consists of two parts, as I told you. First part consists with 337 lines. The poem was to be published according to the poet's intention in the second edition of the Lyrical Ballads in 1800. First part of the poem was composed at Stowey in Somerset. The second part of it was written at Keswick in Cumberland in 1800 after Coleridge's return from Germany. It is a long narrative ballad by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Coleridge wrote Christabel using an accentual metrical system based on the count of only accents, even though the number of syllables in each line can vary from 4 to 12. The number of accents per line rarely deviates from 4. Thematically, the poem is one of the Coleridge's most cohesive construct, with the narrative plot more explicit than previous works. In many respects, the consistency of the poem is most apparent from the structural formality and rhythmic rigidity when regarded alongside the unyielding mysticism of the account. He creates the greatest juxtaposition in the poem. The theme of good versus evil dominates the text of the poem. Christabel presents as a figure of innocence who trusts Geraldine and foolishly brings her into the castle. Geraldine's nature is compared to that of the serpent on more than one occasion. Supernatural good versus evil and human nature are the major themes underlined in this poem. Christabel is an epitome of innocence who not only trusts Geraldine but also brings her home. Geraldine is evil and deceitful in disguise. At many places in the poem, Geraldine seduces the innocent Christabel with her plight by using seductive words. Also, she enters the castle with an evil intention. Sadly, the poem ends with a proper closing and the fate of father and daughter remains unknown. So, the poem relies heavily on religious allusions, most obviously in the biblical Garden of Eden. Seduction, an important theme in this poem again, is both literal and figurative. Symbolical aspects are present in the poem, such as white dove and serpent. Symbols are used to signify ideas and qualities, giving them symbolic meaning. different from literal meaning. Serpent symbolizes temptation, and the white dove represents purity. And Christabel herself is the symbol of purity and innocence. The poem is full of imageries and figures of speech. Imagery is used to make readers perceive things involving their five senses. For example, Edge fills the father's eyes with light, and turning from his own sweet maid, and then they only swelled his rays and pain. He also uses frequently figures of speeches as adjunance, anaphora, alliteration. The lovely Lady Christabel is the example of alliteration, and gemmant. These are and metaphors. These are few figures of speech is used in the poem. Christabel is a prime example of a supernatural work. It contains quintessential Gothic characteristics such as dark scenery, damsels in distress, and a hint of the supernatural. These Gothic elements make Christabel a Gothic poem hidden beneath a romantic mask. The suggested conflict between the evil spirit of Geraldine and the good spirit of Christabel's mother is somewhat mystical and awe inspiring. But this is simply suggested and not shown. The use of the supernatural in Christabel lends it an intriguing air, all the more so as the poem remains unfinished and Geraldine's exact nature and purpose is ultimately not disclosed. The poem narrates the story of Christabel, who is deceived by a ghost or a witch, Geraldine. The poem revolves around the encounter of Christabel with another female character, Geraldine. The poems begin when Christabel goes to the forest to spend time in prayer. Upon reaching the forest, she hears a groaning sound and follows the direction. Soon she finds Geraldine in a miserable condition. Surprised, Christabel asks the reason for her intense pain, and the lady narrates the tragedy to her. She doesn't realize that Geraldine has lied to her. Being kind and full of mercy, Christabel takes the lady to her home. On the way, she notices several warnings of supernatural incidents that includes her dog howling, gates being locked, and dead flames catching the fire. Geraldine's presence changes her surrounding as she also refuses to pray and is unable to cross the iron gates. This is the foreshadow of Geraldine's true nature, which remains mysterious. Christabel is unable to speak about Geraldine and the time she spent with her, including a few intimate moments. It is as if she is under Geraldine's spell. The next day, when her father, Sir Leoline, wakes up, Christabel introduced Geraldine to him, and he instantly falls under her enchantment. Yet when Geraldine unfolds the tragedy, she faced and speaks about her identity. Sir Leoline at once remembers that the lady is one of his friend's daughter. He appoints one of his men for her safe return. However, at the very moment, Geraldine's strange look inflicted Christabel's soul, and Christabel begs her father to send her away. Sadly, Sir Leoline takes Geraldine and leaves the scene. The story remains inconclusive as we do not Christabel's fate and her father's. We do not know about them. Thus we can say poem produces the feeling of fear and mystery through its simple and natural resources. It has glow of evening, sudden flames, and mysterious noise emerge from dim light, and the reader feels the existence of evil power. So it's highly visionary. It is a tale of love, magic, and chivalry. The poem is a part of Coleridge's life-long meditation on the vulnerable of will and agency. The two young female characters in Christabel are certainly vulnerable to the overwhelming powers of the supernatural world. The theme of the power of nature, which is present in much of Coleridge's work, who appears in Christabel. This is a brief introduction I have given you about the background and about the story of the poem. That is all in this video. Thank you very much.